Hi, my name is Bill Cooper and welcome back. This is the fourth video in the Windows 10 Deployment Scenario series. In the previous video we configured our database rules. Now we also talked about application bundles. Some of you might have noticed that I made an application bundles for Lenovo Carbons, but I didn't actually apply them to anything. So back in our database, under our global settings, under our desktop settings, desktops always get the desktop bundle, laptops always get the laptop bundle, and pool laptops always get the laptop bundle. But specific makes and models might need additional software. You might need a bunch of special software installed on X1 Carbons to support all of their special functions. So we'd make the application bundle, as we have here. We'd add all of the apps to it, set the order we want them to install in, and under make and model for Lenovo 20AS, we'd add our light touch application bundle for X1 Carbon Type 20AS. So these machines, in addition to getting the applications from the laptop role, they'll also get the applications from the specific computer ID from the make and model. So we've done that for X1 Carbon 20AS, and we also had a specific bundle for X1 Carbon Type 20 BTs. So now that's finished. The next step, we've got all of our roles configured, our locations are configured, our makes and models are configured. We've added a specific computer in that gets different settings again. We've got our OS, we've got all of our drivers done, we've got boot drivers, we've got applications, we've got a task sequence. We're basically almost ready to roll with this. Next step is we need to update our deployment share, and this time around we'll completely regenerate our boot images because this is the first time that we've done it. Okay, so the process completed successfully. We have updated the deployment share and completely regenerated the boot images. If we scroll down and see what it did, it added a bunch of components. It injected all of the drivers we added in the boot drivers profile. It copied a bunch of stuff into the boot image, including, if we scroll to the bottom, we see that it copied our extra files, custom background, and our DecodeExit scripts went into the boot image. Now the boot image gets plonked in the deployment share boot folder. Because we've only enabled x64 support, it's only created an x64 boot image. The next step is to go into the deployment services, Windows Deployment Services. So let's pin that around while we're here. Now this is on the local server DSO1 boot images. We're going to add a boot image and we're going to browse to that file that we just dumped. D drive, deployment share, boot, light touch PE, x64. Next, finish. Okay, it has successfully added the boot image to our server. We say that in the list here. Now that's for the Darwin server. What we're going to want to do here is we're going to add the rest of the servers. We've got one in Perth, which is the management server, and we've got one in Sydney, which is the management server. Now these servers haven't been set up properly, so let's configure server, integrated with AD, D drive remote install, respond to clients, and not adding any images. Do the same thing for the Sydney server, D drive, okay, so now we can add the boot image to these servers as well. So let's add a boot image, we'll browse, it automatically goes back to the last place we added a boot image from, which is nice. Double click, next, finish. And last but not least, Sydney. Next, finish. Alright, so we've got our deployment server set up. They've got the right boot image. Now what we need to do is on these Sydney and Perth management servers, we need to make sure we've got the deployments log share created, and we need to get the deployment share down there. So let's get rid of this for a minute. Let's go back to our management server. into File and Storage Services, and we go to Shares. We want to make a new share. Advanced. They don't show up in the list. Alright, we'll make the shares manually on each one. Go to the perf management server first. D drive. Let's make our deployment logs. Now we're going to share that out as deployment logs $. Permissions, everyone can have full control, and security, everyone can have full control. Alright, we'll leave this server open in case we need to go back to it, and we'll go to our Sydney management server, opening on the other screen. Okay, we'll go to our D drive. We'll make our deployment logs folder, oops, and we'll share that out, the same thing as before. Alright, that's done. Now we need to get the deployment share itself down there. So back from our management server, if we go into DFS tools, under replication, we're going to have a new replication group. Multi-purpose, MDT deployment share, server. Alright, this is going to be the 2 or more servers. So what we're going to do is we're going to add the deployment server and the 2 management servers in the other sites. We're going to do a full mesh, why not? Replicate continuously, no, probably not. So let's do a, let's just do 6 till 8 business hours can do a little bit of replication, but mostly we'll replicate this stuff outside of business hours. The little bit of replication will help if we just update a configuration file, but if we're adding whole applications and operating systems, we want to let that just run overnight. So that's nice. Primary member is going to be the Darwin deployment server. Local path. Okay, we've got D drive, deployment share. I'm going to replicate that to both of them. I'm going to copy that from there so we can paste it in here. Local folder, same on each server. Yes, we want to create it. Yes, we want to create it. Okay, let's create that. That was a success. We see we have a replicated folder. It's not published in the namespace, which is fine. We've got 3 memberships. Now the staging quota 4 gigabytes. I guess we're unlikely to have any single files that are larger than that, but just in case we ever do, maybe we have a update a couple of large WIMs at the same time. We'll double that staging quota. Oops, I put that in the wrong place in the last one. That was the conflict settings. Alright, staging quota is 8 gigabytes. Realistically, if you followed the best practices for staging quota, this would be equal to the combined size of the 32 largest files in this shared folder. Now, we might end up having a lot of WIM files that are quite large over time, so it's not really that realistic. It's more to do with how often we're updating them, how many we're updating in the same time period, that sort of stuff. I think 8 gigs is going to be more than enough. So everything should be going on there. If we go back, we just minimize that for a minute, go back to one of our perf servers. we now have a deployment share on the D drive. It hasn't actually started replicating anything yet, but it will, I'm pretty sure. Now we're going to probably need to manually share these as well. Let's look at sharings, not shared. So let's share them as deployment share $. Everyone can have read access, and add everyone can have read access. We need to also do the same thing on our Sydney management server. Deployment share, share it out, deployment share $, and set the security so everyone can read it. Alright, so I guess they will replicate over time. You know, they're probably replicating a quite large file at the moment, which is why nothing has started to show up. We'll leave that for a bit and see what happens there. We're done on that server. Back to the main deployment share. We've got our boot images done. We're replicating our deployment share. We've got our deployment logs folders set up with full privileges. We've already configured our database rules with locations that have site-specific settings for where to get this stuff from, such as we'll look at the Sydney one. So the site name is Sydney. The log share is Sydney Management Server Deployment Logs. The WSUS server on that site is the Sydney Management Server using HTTPS. We're on Eastern Standard Time. And the deploy route in that site is Sydney MS01 Deployment Share $. So the clients will connect using the settings in the Bootstrap. They'll pull the configuration data from Darwin. The configuration data will then tell them to go off to their local server to get the OS, applications, drivers, everything else. We're basically ready to give this a test, I assume. So let's minimize this out of the way for a minute. We'll make a testing machine here, just a virtual machine, call it tester, why not? And then put that with the rest of the files from the test lab. Gen 2, UEFI BIOS, give it a couple of gigs of RAM. It's going to be connected to the Darwin site. Make a new VHD, yep, sure. Install OS from network. Now if we get this here and we power it on, what we should see is that it's going to get DHCP from the network. It's going to ask us to boot from our boot image, which is loading now from our deployment server in Darwin, the Light-Touch PEX64 image file. It's now booting into the Windows pre-install environment. We've got our custom background image that we added. It's processing the Bootstrap settings. Now it's going to process the custom settings, which includes all of our database rules. So we'll see that going through each of those steps here. It takes a little bit of time. It doesn't normally take this long. I wonder what's happening. Here we go. It's processing all the different database sections. And there it goes, it's deploying Windows 10. It's named the computer based on the fact that it's a virtual machine. Choose the last 6 digits of the serial number. It's identified where on the Darwin site, and it is off and running with an installation. I'll pause the video and we'll come back when it's finished. We'll then log into it and double check that it's got Microsoft Office. But while that's still running the installation of the OS on this virtual machine, what I might do is we'll just swap back to the deployment server for a second. We'll go back into the deployment workbench and I'll show you the monitoring tab. If we go down to monitoring, we can see here, we'll just refresh that. Is it up to date? Yep, so it's been running for 6 minutes. It's currently up to step 46 out of 91. and the step it's on right now is install operating system. So depending how many computers you had doing deployments around the offices, you might have a few in this list. This is also going to show systems that are being deployed in all sites, because we only have one of these consoles. We don't have this console installed at every site. So this is the one and only monitoring console that all systems will report back to their status. And you can just keep an eye on here. Now, if we had integrated some additional components, we could actually do a remote desktop connection to the Windows PE section of it, so we can see what it's up to. If it does get stuck somewhere after it's installed Windows, then we probably could remote desktop into it without adding the additional components. And yeah, that's about it for the monitoring section. It's pretty straightforward. Once again, I'll pause the video until this is finished. And the deployment to our virtual machine testing system is now complete. We'll connect to this and log in. Okay, we see it's on the domain, so that bit worked at least. It's the first time logging into this system, so it might be a little bit slower than normal. While that's doing that, we'll have a look in the management server. Let's see where it got joined in the domain. So we would expect it to be under Darwin desktops. Let's refresh. Yep, there it is there. Test v23162 in the Darwin desktops OU. So it's named the computer based on the make and model. It's placed it in Active Directory based on what type of computer it is and where it is. And that all looks like that worked fine. Let's finish the login process. Let's see if we've got Microsoft Office installed on this machine. There it is there, Microsoft Office 2013. It's our customized deployment. It does not have access, it does not have info path or link or Skype or OneDrive or anything or any of that junk. And that worked well. So I obviously didn't make any mistakes when I was setting everything up. And let's just go back to our deployment server for a minute. Is there anything else that we need to talk about here? Probably not. So what we'll do in the future to extend this is we can add more makes and models, we can add more locations, we can add new roles, we can add specific computers, we can do anything to any of the settings in the database. We will not have to rebuild the deployment share. In fact, you very rarely need to rebuild the deployment share. Only when you've updated things that go into the boot image, like the boot drivers or the bootstrap or something like that, or you've changed the settings for the actual x64 Windows PE or something like that. You may make a change here. So it's very rare you need to do that. Other things that we can do is we can go into our application bundles and we can add more applications into them. Once again, we don't have to update the deployment share. If we add out-of-box drivers for more Dells or more Lenovos, once again, we do not have to update the deployment share. The deployment share is almost set and forget once it's done. Once all this is configured, that's about it. Let's just refresh that. Yep, 100% completed. Took 35 minutes and 14 seconds. So that formatted the drives, installed the Windows, did Windows updates, installed Microsoft Office, and then did more Windows updates, and then rebooted, did all the out-of-box junk by itself. After booting from the network and pressing enter to continue the network boot, I didn't have to touch it until I logged in, and it was already on the domain, everything set to go. What else? Just out of interest, I wonder whether or not it actually did Windows updates. If it did, we should see it show up in WSUS. Let's just open that up. Okay, it looks like it might not have actually done any updates. It's not showing up in WSUS anyway. Nope, it doesn't appear to be there. I'll have a look at that and maybe in a follow-up video show what obviously I did something wrong with that, or it was the certificate or something dumb like that. In previous times that I've set these things up, it has not been using SSL on WSUS, and the WSUS part has worked fine, so I can only assume it's something to do with it using SSL connection to WSUS. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. In the future, what I might do is make a follow-up video where we create a build and capture deployment share. We'll add another deployment share, keeping it separate so we don't bugger up this one, because at the moment we're deploying a copy of Windows 10 Enterprise that's just straight off of the DVD. So what you should really do is use a virtual machine as a testing reference machine, deploy this Windows 10 Enterprise to it, run all the updates, and then capture it back, so that on future deployments the updating process doesn't take as long and the entire process of deployment can be sped up. When you do that capture image, you can also pre-populate it with applications and things too if needed. However, I'm more of a fan of keeping everything separated out, so when they decide they want to upgrade to Office 2016, you don't have to rebuild the actual image. You'll just do the image rebuild whenever the list of updates for Windows got too large. And obviously the Microsoft Office Pro Plus that we've got here under Deployment Share, Applications, Microsoft Office, it's going to use any updates that are in this Updates folder. So at the moment this version of Office 2013 has been updated to Service Pack 1. That's why all these files are in here. And when Service Pack 2 comes out, you can then update this to Service Pack 2. You won't have to rebuild the image, you won't have to update the deployment share, you won't really have to do anything. It'll just automatically work. That's all for now. Thank you very much.